Welcome to Canvas of the Heart, presented by Free Arts for Abused Children of Arizona. The mission of Free Arts is to transform children's trauma to resilience through the arts. This show is a collection of conversations that spotlight the ways Free Arts creates hope for children and teens who've experienced abuse, neglect, or homelessness. We hope you find this show to be informative, inspiring, and fun. Well, welcome back to Canvas of the Heart. I'm Matt, and I'm here joined by an important guest from a partner agency, someone we work with, Dr. Bianca Harper. He is joining us today on the show. Dr. Harper is a clinical associate professor at Arizona State University inside the School of Social Work and is the director of a partner agency known as ACASI. So welcome to the show, and I wonder if you could start by telling us what ACASI means.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. So ACASI is our acronym for the Arizona Child and Adolescent Survivor Initiative, and that is a community-based program that is statewide that provides services to children and adolescents who have experienced intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide.
Yeah, so this is a very serious issue, and these families have gone through a lot and are still going through and processing a lot. And so it's a really important program, and it's one of the newer partnerships we have here at Free Arts that we're really excited about because it really links some of what we're about. I think when we reached out to you, we were thinking about new partners, and you were thinking about how best to fit in the arts and creativity into the programming that you do with children. So it started off in a good way. To get us going, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your background. What is it that led you into social work and into the project that you lead now?
Okay, so it's been a journey to get to social work. My bachelor's degree is in special education and rehabilitation, and at that time I thought I would like to work with children in an educational setting. And then through doing that work, I realized that a lot of the issues that I was wanting to assist students with were really related to social issues, family stressors, other community needs. And so I started thinking about what could I do that would be still within my role to be able to help support families in various ways. And so through doing some research and looking into different programs, I landed on social work and thought this seems very aligned with what I am interested in and where I see my passion. So I went to graduate school for my MSW, and through that work continued to have the opportunity to really identify so many different options in terms of what my work with children and families could look like. And it was during my second internship, which was actually at Child Help, a local child advocacy center, that I realized really where my my calling was. I was interning in their mental health department and providing clinical services to children who had experienced maltreatment. And I just loved the work. And after that, I thought, this is what I want to do. So I continued in that work after graduation, and here I am about 20 years later still doing child trauma work, and I've done that in a lot of different capacities over the years, but my passion for that has not waned. And I think something that's been really wonderful is that with my MSW and with this interest and passion around child trauma work, there's been so many opportunities for me to do that work in various settings. And so I started out doing that work more in a mental health capacity and working as a child trauma clinician. And I did that for several years and became licensed as a clinical social worker and really loved that work. So I continued doing that. And then I also, at one point, became a forensic interviewer in a child advocacy center. And I loved that as well. So it was a different skill set, but still working with child survivors. And then I worked as a victim advocate at one point. I worked in school settings with students who have had needed additional emotional support in the classroom and in their school setting. And so I've made my way around. I worked in early childhood education for a bit. So just really have had the opportunity to explore a lot of different options with my MSW. So through all that, I continued working with child trauma survivors, and then I ultimately entered into academia. I went back and received my doctorate in social work and wanted to still continue working with child trauma survivors. So I was still doing that work and then also beginning an academic position. And so through that, I have been in academia for about 13 years now, and I've taught courses for MSW students who want to also be engaged in some sort of clinical practice with children and adolescents. And then I joined the ASU Family Violence Center about 4 years ago as the director of ACASI. So I'm very much still integrated into the work around working with child trauma survivors, and I've had a really wonderful journey to get to this place.
Yeah, that sounds very fulfilling, and a not uncommon story of doing different but somewhat related things within your social work career. I'm always out there giving plugs for social work. Bianca, tell us a little bit about the prevalence and the general issues surrounding intimate partner violence, and in particular, intimate partner homicide.
Sure. So one of the challenges with identifying prevalence of both intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide is that we're really basing prevalence rates on reported cases. And we know that many cases, particularly of intimate partner violence, are not reported or not identified in some sort of service sector where then those numbers are reported. So it's difficult to really identify a specific prevalence rate. And when you look at national data around statistics of intimate partner violence, even that varies. And again, it's because those prevalent or those reporting rates. So, you may see some data that'll say 1 in 2, 1 in 2 women, 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 women are impacted by intimate partner violence, and 1 in 4 men, 1 in 6 men, 1 in 7 men. So it's varied. So I'm always very cautious to provide a specific prevalence rate. However, I think that knowing what some of those challenges are around identifying accurate numbers also highlight some systemic issues around intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide. So in addition to the lack of reporting, the other challenge, particularly with intimate partner homicide survivors, is that when there's an intimate partner homicide, depending on how that death is documented and what's determined to be the cause of the death can also impact where it's categorized. So there are intimate partner homicides that maybe aren't documented as an intimate partner homicide, but maybe they're identified as a suicide or an overdose or a heart attack or something else. So sometimes even the classification of a death can also create some challenges around knowing which of those were also intimate partner homicides. And then the other challenge around identifying and really just tracking prevalence around intimate partner homicide survivors is that child survivors who are left behind after the homicide of a parent, that we don't systematically track that anywhere. And so it's really up to individualized organizations or fatality review teams or others to try to track that. But because we don't have something in place that is tracking that, it really skews our prevalence rates. So those are just some of the issues we face around really identifying prevalence for both intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide.
And as a follow-up to that, I'm curious, because there isn't a consistent way to know how many children are affected, that really sounds like it would present a challenge around serving and finding the families where they could benefit from your services. How do you all work through identifying people that would qualify for your services?
And, that is a major challenge that we have faced over time, particularly when we were first starting out with our programming, is identifying those families that wouldn't be coming to us directly through, let's say, law enforcement or through a victim advocate or somewhere else. And so we did a lot of our own sort of investigation of looking at, we would look at media articles, we would look at the news, we would look at data from from ACES DV, they also track some intimate partner homicide data, and so we would look at those different resources and be able to identify, have we been receiving these cases? Where can we go to try to connect with those that perhaps are already in contact with these families to be able to share information about our services? And so it was a lot of our own kind of investigating what's happening in our communities and then reaching out to stakeholders who may be able to connect us with families. And so that oftentimes was, victim advocates or other community service providers. It could have been advocacy centers. It could directly have been law enforcement. So it just really varied. But that has been a challenge. However, over time, as we've developed additional partnerships and really just kind of cultivated the partnerships that we have with those really key stakeholders and potential referral sources, now we receive many more of those referrals. Another really critical referral source is DCS, Department of Child Safety. Right. And so we spent a lot of time developing a partnership with them, and that is really key to staying connected with many of those families as well.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I know that in my own circle, since working with you all, when you talk about the work we do, the populations we serve, you encounter in public people who relate personally. And so they may have their own story or they know of somebody experiencing these things. So it's happened to me where have you heard of ACASI because of the story that I hear by just going around and promoting free arts in some way. So I could see how that community awareness is important, but also the systems that are there to guard and protect really need to know about the availability of the things that you're doing. What we have in common, which is the partnership here, is we are all in spaces where we are attempting to work with and around and support people that are in some form of a healing process. So what does that mean to you to think about what it means to heal from trauma?
So I think that there's, a few different considerations when we think about healing from trauma. I think one important piece of healing from trauma is remembering that healing is something that is lifelong. It is not something where there's an end point or there's a point in time where a trauma survivor will say, okay, I'm finally kind of past what's happened. It's definitely defined by the individual who's had those traumatic experiences. It also, in terms of what healing means, it's very different, right, from one individual to another. So very broadly and generally, we may include certain factors in healing, like, for example, we may include, the ability to cope with the traumatic experiences in adaptive ways. It might be being able to make meaning of those traumatic experiences and in some way be able to have hope for the future, be able to find joy in other aspects of your life after a traumatic experience. So, there's a lot of different ways that one might define healing, but I think it's important that we recognize that it's not something that we have sort of a prescribed a prescribed solution for, because it's so varied. And I think the other piece for us within ACASI, because we also serve in addition to youth and families who have experienced a traumatic experience, like different types of intimate partner violence, many of our families have had a parent murdered because of intimate partner violence. So not only are they dealing with the traumatic experience of the intimate partner violence, but they're also experiencing and struggling with that traumatic grief that comes with that type of experience. And so with that, there's additional considerations around not only how they may define their traumatic experiences, but also that intersectionality with grief and how they try to navigate through that. And in the grief and trauma, they really ebb and flow depending on what's happening in someone's life, right? And so, we may have families who are have additional life experiences that are also adverse or also additional stressors, and those might lead to kind of exacerbating some of the struggles around the trauma they've experienced. And on the flip side of that, we also may have families who have experiences where they're having, they're functioning pretty well. They're having good things happening in their lives. They have a lot of joy and find meaning in different ways. And so there might be times where it seems as if the trauma isn't impacting them in as significant ways at certain times. So it really just ebbs and flows, but it really ultimately comes down to how that person and family are doing overall, just in their life, and whether other circumstances are impacting them.
Every time you donate to Free Arts, something amazing happens. How? Let's paint a picture. Each penny we receive helps us deliver trauma-informed arts programs in a safe space where children can express themselves. We partner with more than 40 different child welfare agencies, a community that reaches over 17,000 children annually. So when you give, you help us turn trauma into resilience. Visit freeartsaz.org to donate and transform countless lives today.
Yeah, I appreciate you reminding us all of how personalized the journey is for anyone that is. And here, when we talk about healing, it can feel very distant depending on the situation that the person's encountering. But we're talking about well-being, right? Yes. How do you return to some personalized sense of how I can feel closest to my own desires, values, sense of developed purpose in life? That's what's behind our definition of what it means to heal. You mentioned traumatic grief. That is its own kind of category of hardships. What have you learned from the audience you're serving about how traumatic grief is kind of distinct or different than other types of hard experiences, even grief experiences?
So what we've learned, and we see this with families, and we've learned this from families, and this is also supported with research around. There are three primary distinctions when we look at traumatic grief versus, or in relation to other types of grief, and one of those is intrusive memories. And so what we find is that for individuals who have experienced traumatic grief as a result of the homicide, they are just inundated with all of these memories of not only the traumatic experiences related to the intimate partner violence, it could also be related to the incident that led to the death of their loved one. So they may be, have kind of this tape playing over and over in their mind of what happened that day, thinking about things that maybe they possibly could have picked up on, or they could have done differently, or just not being able to get those memories out of their mind. And so it's a combination of both the traumatic side of that, and then also the actual homicide itself. So those intrusive memories are something that are different when we're talking about traumatic grief. And the other piece that is very distinct is the avoidance and numbing that an individual will experience as a result of traumatic grief. They've been through something so devastating that a natural way to sort of protect their own vulnerability and their own mental health and allow them to cope is just to try to avoid any reminder, any memory of what happened, and emotionally numb themselves. And so that is something that we see very often, both in the youth we work with and in caregivers. They're trying to get through their day. They're trying to be able to do that in a way that allows them to just function. And so that avoidance and numbing is something that often happens. And as we might imagine, that avoidance and numbing over time can be very problematic in a number of ways, right? Whether that's around relationships, around one's mental health, around isolating oneself, right? I mean, every aspect of what we do, if we're going through these, if we're having these experiences of avoidance and numbing, it's very difficult to function. And then the one other area that we see a difference is around what we identify as psychosomatic symptoms. So these are, thinking about as a result of the emotional distress that someone's going through, their body is actually giving them kind of, is letting them know that they're not okay. So for example, we oftentimes will have youth talk about, they feel just physically sick when they think about what happened. They have no appetite. They feel nauseous. They feel like they're coming down with the flu. There's all of these different physical indicators that are directly related to the traumatic memories, the trauma triggers, other things, and it's all intertwined. And so those three areas we see as very different with the youth and families we work with when there's been an intimate partner homicide, which is just it's different than some of the other experiences they've had.
I could see how, with those things being, particular and facing issues of those that you're working with, how the arts would fit into that. I'm curious, how have the arts fit into your programming in the past? How do they now? What values do those experiences bring for the people you're serving?
So, we have, within ACASI, we have looked at and really prioritized a holistic approach to healing. And so we know that healing occurs in a lot of different ways with a lot of different modalities. And so while one of our core services is being able to connect families with trauma support, so working with a clinician who specializes in trauma, we provide that as a key resource. But what we've also know is that in addition to traditional talk therapies and other ways of providing those mental health services, being able to incorporate creative arts in some capacity can be really helpful for the youth and families we're working with. For some, they're not at a place to be able to articulate what they've been through, but they are able to communicate their thoughts and feelings through other creative outlets. And so being able to incorporate arts has been really key to what we do and the services that we're providing to families. And then the other piece is that what we've recognized is that as we've incorporated the arts into more of our family support activities, we're having increased family engagement. So, for example, our free arts days that that you all facilitate in collaboration with us are some of our most well-attended events. And so we recognize that families are interested, they're finding value in being able to engage in these types of activities. And so it's something that we have known just based on research that's informing practice, but we also now have these opportunities where we're working with our partner agencies like Free Arts, and we're seeing those outcomes and families asking for more of those opportunities. So it's definitely at the very central to the services we provide.
That's awesome to hear, and that's the reason why we exist. We want to be an assist to these other functions that are happening. There's space for the clinical, and then there's space for, I don't want it to be that intense, and we can use the arts as a way, because the arts can still just be fun and recreational, and it can be that way for the family to just do something different, that it doesn't involve the pecking order of authority or who gets chosen first, any of those kind of things that happen. We can all have a place in it. So that's really awesome to hear. With the time we have left, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the community response overall to the issue. How could communities come together in a better way to support survivors?
So I think that there's many ways we can go about that, and it is such a complex issue that I think we have to look at what is feasible that we can do based on kind of the communities in which we are a part of. I think one of the important pieces is that there's a lot of stigma and a lot of silence around issues related to intimate partner violence, certainly around intimate partner homicide. And so I think one piece is that we really have the opportunity to provide a lot of psychoeducation and awareness around the fact that not only does this occur, but there's also supports for those who are going through these types of experiences. And I think the other piece around challenging stigma is that through that psychoeducation, we can help dispel, myths, stereotypes, and just really increase knowledge around different issues and factors associated with intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide. One of the things that we hear often from survivors is that they feel very alone in their experience. They do experience the stigma from others around what their family's gone through, and people in communities may be maybe talking about an incident, particularly if there's something that's high profile and it's made the news. There's just, because of that, all of those events, it can just be very isolating and difficult for somebody who's gone through these experiences to really seek support. And even if they know the support's there, those other issues may prevent them from doing so. So I think a lot of psychoeducation in our communities can be particularly helpful. And then if we look at just, around prevention in general, if we look at what are some of those risk factors for intimate partner violence that in some cases lead to intimate partner homicide, how can we kind of get at the etiology of that, right? So we know that, there's a lot of vulnerability for intimate partner violence to occur if there's been a child trauma history, if there's been previous violence in a home, if families, or if there's a history of violence just against others, not even just within the family system, but just against other people. If there's mental health challenges, if there's a history of suicidality. I mean, there's just so many factors that could play in, that are contributing factors or risk factors for intimate partner violence. And then in some cases also for intimate partner homicide. So I think if we as a community can educate ourselves around these issues and be able to work on those from a prevention perspective, that can help just support survivors and also just think about additional strategies for prevention.
Yeah, prevention of recognizing, that it's quite possibly in your sphere of relationships. And then it's a little like our work. On the most ideal setting, we'd hope that none of this would need to be here, right? That there wouldn't be any children that are experiencing abuse or neglect. But then we're realists, knowing that there is going to be this population that experiences this. Even when I talk to bigger groups and their adults were getting excited either to mentor or financially support Free Arts, you meet people who've had this experience and were never associated with a service, with child welfare or any other provider. And that can be, hard to accept that this is part of our reality. And so I very much think that it's on all of us, listeners included, viewers included, to think about how we prevent. And those are, better sustained communities with better services. And you're talking so much about early stressors on the people involved, often the adults that are involved in the incidents that are, affecting these families. But some of the roots of this go back, way back. And so, there is this community need around this issue that's so important. That said, we're almost up on time, but this has been awesome. I wonder if you can tell us about the services available at ACASI and also how people can contact ACASI if this is something that can help them.
Sure. So as I mentioned at the beginning, ACASI is a statewide program that provides direct services to child and adolescent survivors of intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide. We are grant funded, so all of our services are of no charge to families who participate. We do serve from birth up to age 21. So if there's been, if a family has a young child, those services will be geared more towards the caregivers and really helping them support the young child, and then from there whatever is developmentally appropriate for the age group. In terms of the intimate partner violence cases that we accept, we have very specific case types that we take. And so we have our intimate partner homicide cases, like I mentioned, but we also serve children who have had a parent who's had a near fatality as a result of intimate partner violence. So this may have been somebody who was shot or stabbed or strangulation, or just really, if you think about just those most severe cases where somebody
physical assault
survived, but it was as a result of intimate partner violence that it even occurred, we will take those cases. We also serve familial homicide cases. So if there was a death within a family and it was a result of intimate partner violence, it may have been, for example, maybe an adult child who was trying to protect a parent from an assault from their partner, and through that they were murdered. those types of cases we take as well. We also take suicide cases. So if there was a suicide completion and there was intimate partner violence in that family's history, then we will serve those children as well. So we really look at, these cases where there's children who have been through these really devastating experiences related to intimate partner violence, and we're there to support them. The services that we provide intensive case management. So if they need to connect with any community resources or supports, then we work as a liaison to assist them with that. We oftentimes liaison with schools, particularly after an intimate partner homicide, to help support that child get back into the school setting, to be able to help also prepare teachers, social workers, principals, others to know ways that they can support that child during this time. We also provide victim advocacy, so we do a lot of work with, we'll provide court accompaniment. So if there's a court case as a result of the incident, we will accompany them to court. We'll work with other advocates that may be working in some of the other service sectors as well. So we'll reach out to detectives on the case or anyone else who perhaps the family is trying to better understand and where the case status is or what's happening. So we do a lot of that liaison work with these different groups. We also provide, we contract with trauma therapists throughout our state, and they are vetted. They're provided additional training around intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide, and they provide therapeutic support to families within ACASI. And then we also have a therapeutic mentoring program for youth, and so that allows youth to be connected with a mentor that will provide some traditional kind of mentoring activities where they're connecting with them and going out in the community and doing different activities together. But we also have the therapeutic element is doing some goal setting with that youth around what they could benefit from in terms of something that maybe socially there's something that they're really wanting to work on, and those mentors help assist working towards those goals. And then we also partner with Grand Canyon Youth out of northern Arizona to provide outdoor therapeutic adventures. So we take youth out on camping trips, on river rafting trips. We just get them out in nature and
sounds awesome.
Have a great time together. And then lastly, we provide different types of family support activities. So we typically will have an activity at least quarterly, sometimes more often, and it varies depending on what families are interested in and what we would like to do, and what we have, the capacity to do. So sometimes those include like our free arts days, or we've had drumming circles, we've had a self-defense class, we've done other types of creative art activities, we've done we've done day hikes. It's a mixture of a lot of different activities, but the whole idea behind them is to provide a space for families to come together with others with shared lived experience and build community with one another. So that's kind of an overview of what we do. One last thing in terms of criteria for our program is that the only criteria is that there's a child survivor, the birth to age 21, that the family resides in Arizona currently. The intimate partner violence or homicide could have occurred anywhere, but if they live here now, we can serve them. And there is no time limitation on services, so they can take part as long as they would like to. And if anyone's interested in referring over or learning more, they can either call us, email us, or on our website, there's a place to submit a referral, and then we will get back to them within 48 hours, and we go from there.
All right, so we'll just close this out by telling our audience if they want to find out more about services, they can visit socialwork.edu Family Violence Center. That is the ACASI program at Arizona State University. Searching either of those terms will bring you up on that. We'll also put some information in the links for this actual show. Bianca, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate your time and educating us about this important issue that's affecting so many families.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's great. So this is Canvas of the Heart. If you've enjoyed this show, do us a favor and like and subscribe. and share it with somebody that would benefit from this, and we all gain from that. I'm Matt. This is Canvas of the Heart from Free Arts, Arizona. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of Canvas of the Heart. We'd love to hear your questions and feedback by email at hello@freeartsaz.org. You can find more information about Free Arts by visiting our website at freeartsaz.org. We'd like to thank the many individual and corporate donors and the hundreds of volunteers that make Free Arts programs possible. Take care, and we will talk to you soon.